Hey, hi everyone. This is Ran on your show, E-Copy with Experts. Today we have Jeff Ferguson with us, who is the CEO of Amplitude Digital and needs no introduction. Welcome, Jeff, to our show tonight.
Pleasure to be here.
Superb. Jeff, before we move forward, I would like to throw some light on your career, distinguished career rather, and more about Amplitude Digital. And then we'll take it forward and listen to your insights about how the digital landscape has evolved over the years.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I request you to introduce yourself a bit more and about Amplitude Digital as well.
Sure thing. Yeah, it's funny. I've been doing this for like about 25 years now, over 25 years at this point. And yeah, I've started off back in 1995. I originally came out of undergrad with degrees in computer science and in communications. And I originally wanted to be a copywriter, but fell into digital marketing, but kind of originally went down this path of the corporate side of the world and started at a kind of a little company, but originally then went into some of the more famous companies that were on my resume, like Hilton Hotels Corporation and Kimberly-Clark and Napster and Experian and Lower My Bills and things like that. And after a while, I decided that the corporate life really wasn't my scene and I decided to become a consultant and started a little consultant firm that was called Fang. And that was back in 2010. And originally that was mostly based on doing audits for a lot of companies like eHarmony and a few others that were out there. And a lot of times the audits that we're doing, this was for SEO and paid search and a few other things that were out there. And I always used to joke that a lot of times I'd turn those audits in and people would get fired. Sometimes it'd be the internal team, sometimes it'd be the agency, whatever it is. And the people I was working for would turn around and say, would you like to take this on? And I'd say, I'm really not in a place to do that. I'm not really an agency. I'm just a person. And I had one of my clients was actually a friend of mine that was over at the company Just Fab, and John Respenda, who's still obviously a very good friend of mine now. And he had suggested really hard that it basically said, you really should think about it because it's recurring revenue and it'd be a good place, a good direction for you going forward. And so I took him up on it and he offered me that opportunity for that one. And so we staffed up and Fang developed into an actual agency. And we grew it from there, taking on more and more clients and became the agency that I had basically wished that I could have hired back when I was working on the corporate side of things, the one that was transparent and that really handled things from a very consumer journey type of way of doing things. And I did that for about a decade. Mm-hmm. And then in 2020, actually it's about 2019, 2020, I was getting a lot of early offers to buy Fang from different companies. But I really wasn't completely ready and we weren't as large as a lot of those companies thought we were. But I could see that light. I could see that was a possibility to it. But one of my other partner agencies that I was working with, which is Amplitude, they had talked about a merger for a while there. So in 2020, we actually merged with Amplitude Digital. And obviously everybody knows what else happened in 2020, which was right when the pandemic hit. So like after all the work of actually coming up with the merger, we did it right at that time frame and we couldn't even celebrate. We actually had to do all our celebrations over Zoom calls and we're toasting each other over Zoom calls and things like that. And it turned out to be a good thing for us that we merged because it actually made us a lot more solid. We were able to work together and all those combined clients and everything. And so we made for a good team during all of that. And now here we are all these years later and we've like moved on like past that. Two of the business partners that were part of Amplitude have actually since left and I've gone back to just being solo over at Amplitude, which is why I've got the title back again of being a CEO of the company. And we're back to that where we've got a nice, stable, healthy list of clients. In addition to running Amplitude, I'm also an adjunct professor over at UCLA, where I teach advanced digital marketing and SEO classes. The SEO class was one that I actually helped develop for them. It was their first one for them. Now it's actually one that they've got other teachers for. And if that's not busy enough, we actually launched a record store last year back in July. My partner Ellen and we launched a little record store here in Burbank that was like a pandemic project that we wanted to do. And she runs that most of the time. I kind of step in during the weekends, but I built all the cabinets and it was based on my hobby of record collecting, but it's something that she was really into as well. And we just went through and had our first successful, really big record store day last weekend. And we had a line around the block and all kinds of crazy Taylor Swift fans and things like that. So yeah, that's, I guess, the long version of that one.
Quite a journey, I must say. You've been there, seen that, done that, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think have been the most significant changes in the industry or advancements in the digital advertising or marketing that you have witnessed during this journey of yours?
Yeah, it's crazy. When I think about it, there's been so many big changes that have really come up about it. And when I was really thinking about this, like the things have appeared, because you got to remember, like when in 95, like what kind of really started it off was like, there was basically the fact that there were websites now and that came around. There were websites just a little bit before that. And then the fact that there were websites, and then 95 was really tracked the fact that Hotwired had a banner ad on it. And that was really, you could mark that as kind of like almost like the true beginning of digital marketing for it. But then from there, from within my career that most far, you've got kind of like the rise of search engines, right? So you've got Google in 98, but you've got all those other search engines that were around that. You've got the advent of social media, which was the mid 2000s. You've got this gargantuan jump in social media, right? It's now just everywhere, right? To where you've got this entire civilization around us, to where you've got more people with mobile phones than you do potable drinking water around the world. And where I find that really crazy is that when I was in college, I worked at a Radio Shack, which are like that. Radio Shacks don't even exist anymore. But when I was at Radio Shack, I used to sell mobile phones, right? So it was something where they were just first getting established, and they were those really big brick kind of mobile phones, or the type that used to have like in sacks, or the kinds that like they had to be like plugged into your car. And so, I mean, that technology is come to advance to where now they're just computers. They're just full-blown computers that are just around you all the time. So it's the fact that has become so important is crazy. Programmatic advertising is staggering around it. I guess I'd have to throw data-driven advertising in there, which is a little hard to comprehend as far as like where it really is, but it's certainly part of the puzzle. And then just when you think, what else could there be? You've got AI and machine learning getting really interesting now. And it's something where, I probably just before the pandemic, I had been speaking on machine learning at different conferences because Google was pushing RankBrain out on folks. And that was just like its new introduction. And you were also seeing a lot of machine learning getting involved in paid search advertising with some of its tricks and stuff like that. But it really wasn't the hype machine it is now with ChatGPT and with Bard and everything else. So it really wasn't that crazy as it is now. Right now, like regular people are into it, and now you've got everything else to it. I was able to like dust that presentation off and pull a lot of those slides back off. And so these are all suddenly useful again, because they actually had all these great explanations of machine learning and the difference between that and AI and a bunch of other things. And I could trot those out in front of my students again and said, hey, look, this is all useful. And plus I have to update a bunch of this stuff and show that, and have all these great discussions with my students and my clients and all these kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, that's the kind of stuff that I love about being in this business, man. It's like that. It never stops. It never stops evolving. Right. And my best friend, he works in traditional media, and I've always made fun of the fact that it's like, hey, look, you've still got the same toys to play with. That never changes. The only thing that changes about what you're dealing with is like the TV shows that are on, like that, or maybe the radio shows or the print magazines or whatever it is. But my stuff, like new technology is coming out all the times. And these, I get new toys. So it seems like you get new toys every 6 months to play with or whatever it is. And that I'm constantly out there having to learn, having to play with, whatever it is. And so it's always the things. And the people that I see around that in my business, they get frustrated by that, they kind of throw their hands up and say, oh man, it's always a new thing. And I go, man, that's what makes it great in my opinion. I love it. I love it all the time.
Great. And talking about PPC, one of the most important elements of a successful PPC campaign is ad copy. And apart from that, what do you feel are the best effective writing practices that not only tracks clicks, but also drives conversations, which you would have experienced thus far?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think people miss when it comes to ad copy and things like that, when it comes to PC, is really not paying attention to where the keywords that they're associating with that ad copy are, where they are in the consumer journey. It's one of the things where a lot of times they're just kind of like writing to write. Like they're just basically looking at everything is bottom of the funnel all the time. And it's easy to do that with paid search, right? Because paid search, for the most part, those ads are very bottom of the funnel driven, but not everything is, right? It's one of the things where it's really rare that you're going to get anything that is truly upper funnel, right? There's rarely any ads in Google Ads that are about awareness or whatever it is, but you can have stuff that is solidly in consideration, right? So you've got consideration and you've got purchase that are built into the stuff. And those are two different moods, right? That you're playing in those things. And if you're throwing the same type of language at people for those two different moods, you're going to throw people off, right? So if you're talking about purchase to the consideration set, like you're going to spook them, or you're going to run them off, whatever it is. And that's the difference, right? So you really have to, it's one of the things where you got to focus on your USP in different ways at that level. You got to focus on the emotional triggers at different levels, right? It's different languages on this one. You got to test in different ways at those type of different levels. So the user experience is different levels, like which pages you're driving them to at that level of different levels. Like at the consideration side of things, it might be a landing page that has got options on it, right? But at the purchase side of things, right, it's laser focused. It's probably just one page, right? It's just basically, no, it's this page, right? It's one product probably by that point, right? You really have to know where that person is in that journey. And that copy is going to make all the difference in the world, right? And like that's the whole reason why ad groups are there and why you need to split these things up into the smaller groups and really split them up. And these days it's even easier. It's even more fun. Now that you've got those dynamic ads with all those different headlines and all those kind of things to it. So take advantage of that. You can test even more. You can do a lot more with those descriptions, but do split those things up. Do make sure that you're paying attention to stuff, and do make sure that you've got it all split up. But because otherwise, like I said, you could really spook an audience if you're not paying attention to that kind of stuff.
Great. And you did mention about programmatic media during the conversation. With so much of data and available at their disposal and targeting capabilities, which is top notch these days. How do you feel companies can effectively leverage programmatic media to reach their target audience while still maintaining a brand safety and avoiding ad fraud?
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of my favorite things in the world, right? I think it's one of the things where we can't sell it to our clients enough. But it still feel it's underutilized by so many different brands out there. And it really can run the gamut along the consumer journey, right? And especially in a time like now, right? You've got so many people that are worried about the economy getting shaky and things like that. And where a lot of times people are immediately going to do crazy things like cut that upper funnel, which they shouldn't do, right? It's the worst thing in the world to do when the economy gets shaky is to cut the upper funnel. But upper funnel is one of the things where it's really solid, right? There's all kinds of great options at programmatic. Display's the easy one. Display's the oldest one that you can get programmatic. But these days, through programmatic, you can get things like connected television, which is like buying television. It's amazing things. You can get streaming audio that way. You can get billboards, digital billboards through programmatic. That is mind-bending stuff that you're buying outside media, like out of home through programmatic. That is just mind-blowing kind of stuff. And it's through a programmatic platform. So you've got some of the, what if you think about it, is like three of the oldest forms of traditional media now that you've got access through programmatically with all the superpowers of targeting that we've got through digital, right? So you've got television, you've got out of home, and you've got effectively radio with streaming audio, right? Through all that targeting. All right. And then you've got this bonus ability, right? If you're using the right platform partner, like we're big fans of using StackAdapt, but I know if you use Trade Desk or some of these other ones, they've got abilities to it where they've got these cool remarketing tricks that they can actually use these. And I hate to call them tricks, but it's a trick where they got these great remarketing things where you can actually tie back to it to where since those other types of platforms like connected television, like billboards, streaming audio don't have a click component to it where they can't buy in that moment to where you can remarket on a platform where they can. You can prove out that those platforms actually worked out. So you can finally prove out that ROI, right? And that'll make all the difference in the world. So in those days where people are going to go and they're like, hey, look, if I can't measure it, I'm not going to use it. You can measure it and you can prove that out and you can prove that ROI out. So use the heck out of the thing, right? So that's finally that tie for that upper funnel thing that people have been longing for years. Fine. Like what people have been longing for years, that's finally there. And then take this down for consumer for consideration and purchase. That's all there. You get plenty of stuff for native. It's fun along those lines. You've got all those other kind of platforms that are down. And then the stuff that we really like to get into on programmatic, obviously there's the classic remarketing stuff where you can follow people around if they put something in their basket and they don't buy. That's easy. That feels like that's been done. If you're not doing it, it feels like an easy thing. But the type of remarketing we like to remind people of is if you've got existing customers, right? It's one of the things where post-purchase is something where most marketers forget that, hey, look, if you've already got a customer, it is cheaper to hold on to a customer and get them to come back than to get another one. That is one of those things where it's funny. They teach you that in school. And for some reason, it feels like that when people get out in the world, they immediately forget that lesson. And it's usually because their boss is knocking them over the head constantly about getting new business, new growth, new business,
fresh business,
whatever it is, new customers, whatever like that. And they forget to take care of their existing customers over against. But meanwhile, their churn is going off the charts, where it is. And I learned about churn the hard way back when I was working at Napster and when I did some consulting for a couple of dating services over the years and a couple other ones because you got to pay attention to your churn. Otherwise you bleed to death. While you're trying to get new customers, whatever it is. And there's money doing that. We've worked for a couple of the food box companies, food delivery companies and things like that. And you got to take care of those ones as well. So we've had some really good fun things where we've uploaded their customer lists into the services and did custom match with programmatic, with social media, with all these different services where we're chasing them down, reminded them to come back again, pick their meals, about specials, about all kinds of stuff. And we're closing that loop up and we're getting them to come back over and over again. And it could be things like the food delivery where it's kind of, hey, pick your meals for the next week and keep them back. And we're getting them to do it over and over again. But the other ones we've done, it could be anything about make sure and re-up for the next step in your subscription, or could be customer onboarding. Customer onboarding is the one we learned at Napster, which is make sure, and we did that for Sony Pictures Television for one of their streaming products. We did a bunch of other ones where it's like, hey, look, you don't teach these people how to use this product. They won't know how to use the product and they will stop using it. They just won't give up and they'll move on and they'll notice that the monthly charge on their credit card and they'll split after a while. It's like that's like this old school concept of the consumer journey. There's a reason they teach this stuff in school, and it's more than just the classic tactics of just, hey, look, we're just going to do Google ads when it goes. That consumer journey has a purpose in life. And if you don't plan for that whole journey, you're just missing out because you got to use all these pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Jeff, before we wrap this up, I cannot let you go without asking this burning topic of AI content and Chat GPT, right? So what is your take on it? AI content, the way it has hit us, like the storm that we all are in right now. Where do you think it is heading? And the scare that it has left on the content writers and other industry people, how do you think all of this evolving over a period of time?
So it's funny. I'm excited by it. That's funny. To a certain point, I use a lot of those tools to help me with my research to a point. Yeah. It's one of the things where use but verify has become the mantra for these types of things. I write for publication for Search Engine Journal and a few other ones, and I never put anything out without actually checking in with. I'll have my editors and fact check and stuff, whatever it is. You just never know if these systems are going to hallucinate on you and whatever it is. And I have found it very useful to kind of help in some instances to get past the terror of the blank page when you're starting off with something new, and or sometimes to help you with inspiration of the new ideas for something, whatever it is. We've certainly used it around the office for certain things, for some of our keyword research work and just all kinds of stuff. I can certainly see the power of that on the content side of it. When it comes to the idea of letting these systems just blanketly write like an entire piece of content for you, forget it. That's not what these systems are for, right? And they shouldn't be, because these systems are pulling from other places, and they, like I said, they need to be fact checked. They need to be looked at. Their systems aren't always up to date. ChatGPT is limited up to, I think it's September 2021. Like Bard is the first one to tell you that it is. My best friend and I have had these funny things where Bard is sometimes incapable of realizing that certain people have died in conversations. So you're like, so it's one of the things where it's not completely there yet. So you can't let it do all the things, whatever it is. But there's certain things where it's not giving proper credit for certain things. So you could get yourself in a lot of trouble on stuff. And when you should be quoting somebody and not, there's a lot to this kind of stuff. But that said, there's a lot of power to it. There's been plenty of times where there's been things that I've written where I've fed it back into it and it said, hey, great, break that up into a series of tweets for me. And I'm going, that's the greatest thing ever, because I hated doing that. Or make sure you threw some emoticons in there and things like that, because that just saved me a bunch of time. So it's like, I can see the power of this stuff. We've done some other stuff recently where we've been playing around, even just for the record store, where we've done searches for it and, hey, show me some recommendations for speakers that go with a record player with a built-in preamp. And then said, now do it for ones that are less than $150. And my partners looked over my shoulder and she said, that's way better than what Google's do. As far as, and I go, that's why both Google and Bing are terrified of this thing. I said, look, they're both throwing a bunch of money at it for a reason. And the next 18 months, if not less, are going to be amazing times for us. Again, it's going to happen. So it's all going to be very cool. I just hope we're ready for it. And I hope we don't trip over ourselves in the process of doing this. So,
yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
Great. So Jeff, it has been wonderful speaking with you and understanding your perspective on digital marketing and how the landscape has evolved. And I'm sure our audiences would have benefited a lot listening to your insights, which you have shared with us. And thank you so much for taking out time for this podcast. And it was lovely speaking with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff.